Hello student, welcome to the lecture on introducing Indian society, and after this lecture we will be able to learn the following objectives. Understand Indian culture and civilization, understand the history of India, ancient to modern, understand the class system of India, understand the social demography of India, understand the status of urban and rural centers. Introducing Indian society. To understand anything else, you must first observe the most important part of the Indian society, its unity in diversity. We find unity in India in all its historical and cultural facets. India is a secular state, which means that it has one constitution and uniform rule of law for its entire people living in different regions, speaking different languages and believing in different religions and faiths. Today, Hindus, Jains, Muslims, Sikhs, Christians and people of other faiths participate together in administration, politics and public life. India's culture and civilization life, ancient as well as modern, is generally calculated and assessed in the light of what we regard as civilization and culture. We usually speak of India's civilization as highly advanced and its culture as superb in every way. What is culture? Why is it important? How does it define us? The way we pray, eat, dress, talk, etc. is very different in different places in India. We speak of cultures and civilization of other cities, communities, societies and countries and enjoy hearing about them. This means that we understand and accept the presence of a multitude of cultures, implying thereby a simultaneous acceptance of the validity of these multiplicities and therefore meaning that every culture is relevant to that particular circumstance of society which upholds it as its ideal. Anthropologists classify people into races based on the differences and similarities in their physiognomy or bone structure and the appearance of the face, particularly the nose. The anthropological evaluation, if it is applied to people in India, will not find one kind or one set of people throughout the country. There is a geographical impact upon the structure of the body and many other factors which differentiate the way or conduct of the day-to-day life of people. We generally speak of a person as cultured when there is a charitable expression on the part of that person in regard to others in feeling, in words and in outward conduct. We have to go a little deeper into the causes that motivate the behavior of a person in this manner. Why should one be impelled to speak sweetly to another? Though we may accept that speaking sweetly is a part of cultured behavior, what is it that prompts a person to speak sweetly to another person? If it is selfishness, exploitation, to utilize that person in some manner by hooking that individual, then sweet speaking would not be a part of culture. It would be a dramatic, deceptive attitude, and we cannot regard sweet speech as a part of culture. Therefore, merely speaking sweetly is not a part of culture. There is something else behind it. Even a charitable act cannot be called culture unless there is something living force behind it. Because we may express a gesture of charity with a highly selfish motive. Thus, culture is not any kind of external gesture, neither dress nor even language. Sometimes people base their culture on their religion, their scriptures. There are scripture-oriented religions whose adherents interpret everything in their lives from the point of view of that particular sacred text. If something is not mentioned in that text, it would not be a holy attitude. Now think about this and try to answer this question. Is technological advancement a sign of advanced culture? Brief history of India, ancient to modern. History of India has been long speculated worldwide for its richness and diversity. India has been home to some of the oldest civilizations, dynasties and kingdoms which have been of interest to historians from all across the world. The history of India can be broadly divided into 5 parts: prehistoric history of India, ancient history of India, medieval history of India, modern history of India and post-independent history of India. Prehistoric history of India. Prehistoric era in the history of India has been long speculated by historians across the globe. The exact time when the prehistoric settlements evolved in the history of India is hard to determine, but most historians believed them to have evolved somewhere between 2 lakhs and 3,500 BC. Prehistoric evidences in the history of India include several Mesolithic sites which have been excavated in the Chota Nagpur region of the country. These sites are believed to have flourished between 8000 and 4000 BC. Several other prehistoric sites in the country include the Bhimbetka caves, which are located in close proximity to Bhopal and believed to be at least 12,000 years old. Ancient history of India. Ancient history of India is marked by the Indus Valley Civilization, which is one of the earliest known civilizations to mankind. As the name suggests, the Indus Valley Civilization flourished around the basin of river Indus in the northern western part of the nation. This civilization is believed to have flourished at around 3300 BC and it existed for about 2000 years. This civilization ended close to 1300 BC and its end was marked with the emergence of the Harappa civilization, which is sometimes also referred as a latter phase of the Indus Valley civilization. At the time when the Gupta dynasty flourished in the northern parts of the country, most parts of the southern India were conquered by the Chalukyas, the Cholas, Pallavas and the Pandyas. The Harappa civilization existed in India between the time period of 1900 BC and 2600 BC. After Harappa, it was the Vedic civilization which flourished on the Indian soil. This civilization was mainly spread over the fertile lands of the Great Gangetic Plains between 300 and 400 BC. All the major parts of the Indian subcontinent came under the rule of the Maurya dynasty. Ashoka, the famous Indian emperor whose official symbol is today used as the emblem of India, was from this dynasty. The Maurya dynasty was later divided into a number of smaller kingdoms in the next 1500 years. It was during this period that the nation's economy emerged as one of the largest and potent economies in the world. A large part of India was later reunited for about 200 years under the rule of the Gupta rulers. The Gupta dynasty existed in country between 300 BC to about 550 BC. This period is sometimes also referred as the Golden Age of India. It was also during the Gupta period when Hinduism flourished in the region. Today, Hinduism is the religion practiced by a majority of Indian population. Now we come to the medieval history of our India. Medieval history of India. The medieval history of India was mainly dominated by the Mughal dynasty and several other Muslim rulers. Kerala, a coastal state in southern part of the nation, gave way to the first Muslim traders in India. It was the first exposure of Islam in the country. However, the Muslim rule laid its first feet in India after 712 AD when an Arab general, Muhammad bin Asim, conquered some parts of Punjab in the northern part of the country. Muhammad bin Asim successfully conquered the Sindh and the Multan, which then comprised a major portion of Punjab. After this conquest, many Muslim rulers ruled on the Indian soil, including the great Mughal emperor Akbar. The Mughal dynasty was the most prominent dynasty during this phase of the history of India. The Mughal Empire gave country some of its great rulers such as Jalaluddin, Muhammad, Jahangir and a few more. Mughal dynasty is famously known for its architecture. Monuments built under the Mughal rule include the Red Fort of Agra, the Red Fort of Delhi, the Jama Masjid and a lot more. In fact, the Taj Mahal, one of the wonders of the world, was constructed by a Mughal emperor in the memories of his beloved wife. In the medieval history of India, when the great Mughal rulers governed most parts of the nation, there were also several other dynasties and kingdoms which flourished in India. These were mostly the independent Rajput kingdoms of Rajasthan, the Maratha kingdom of Maharashtra, the Sikh provinces in Punjab and a few small dynasties. The Delhi Sultanate was also prominent in medieval era of Indian history before Mughal Empire dynasty. Vijayanagara was also a prominent power in southern parts of India during medieval phase of the history of India. The nation also witnessed several Afghan invasions during this period. Modern history of India. The modern history of India is primarily marked by the East India Company, British Raj, revolt of 1857 and the Indian struggle of independence. After the later, Mughal and several other dynasties and kingdoms, including the Delhi Sultanate and the Sikh, came the East India Company. It was a British company which later made a tight grip over the governance of the entire country and established its rule all over India. However, its rule faced a heavy opposition which finally evoked a revolt in 1857. In the history of India, this revolt is famously known as the Revolt of 1857. After the revolt of 1857, the rule of India was snatched from the hands of the British East India Company and the governance of the nation came under the direct rule of Britain. Soon an independence struggle was launched in the country. This independence struggle was mainly non-violent in form and was conducted under the leadership of leaders like Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi or Mahatma Gandhi. Under the British rule in India, there were only two major nationalist political parties in the country, namely the Muslim League and the Indian National Congress. After a long struggle, India finally achieved its independence from Britain after the Second World War in 1947. At the same time, the partition of the country took place and the nation was divided into Pakistan and the Union of India. Post-independent history of India. A new chapter was introduced in the history of India on 15th August 1947. The nation gained its independence from the British rule on this date and became a dominant within the Commonwealth. Jawaharlal Nehru of the Indian National Congress was made the first Prime Minister and Dr. Rajendra Prasad became the first President of the independent India. Later on, January 26, 1950, India became a republic within Commonwealth by promulgating its constitution, which was inspired by the constitution of many countries such as Germany, Canada, France and United States, etc. A lot has happened in India ever since then. You will find abundant information through various resources. Class and community. Although many other nations are characterized by social inequality, perhaps nowhere else in the world has inequality been so elaborately constructed as in the Indian institution of caste. Caste has long existed in India, but in the modern period it has been severely criticized by both Indian and foreign observers. Caste has undergone significant change since independence, but it still involves hundreds of millions of people. In its preamble, India's Constitution forbids negative public discrimination on the basis of caste. There are thousands of castes and sub-castes in India, and these large kingship-based groups are fundamental to South Asian social structure. Each caste is part of a locally based system of independence with other groups involving occupational specialization and is linked in complex ways with networks that stretch across regions and throughout the nation. Among the Indian terms that are sometimes translated as caste are Varna, Sati, Jat, Biradri and Samaj. All of these terms refer to ranked groups of various sizes and breadth. Varna or color actually refers to large divisions that include various castes. The other terms include caste and subdivision of caste, sometimes called subcaste. Many castes are traditionally associated with an occupation such as high-ranking Brahmins, middle-ranking farmer and artisan groups such as potters, barbers and carpenters, very low-ranking, untouchable, leather workers, butchers, launderers and latrine cleaners. There is some correlation between ritual rank on the caste hierarchy and economic prosperity. According to the Rig Veda, sacred texts that date back to oral tradition of more than 3,000 years ago, progenitors of the four-rank Varna groups sprang from various parts of the body of the primordial man, which Brahma created from clay. Brahmins or priests were created from the mouth. They were to provide for the intellectual and spiritual needs of the community. Kshatriyas, warriors and rulers were derived from the arms. Their role was to rule and to protect others. Vaishyas, landowners and merchants sprang from the Thais and were entrusted with the care of commerce and agriculture. Sudras, artisans and servants came from the field. Their task was to perform all manual labor. India has been consciously working hard to get over class division in the society because many people have argued that it is unfair to determine people's status only on the basis of their birth. People should be given the chance to earn their status and living style, and everyone is an equal citizen of the country. Caste discrimination is in fact illegal. Indian demography. The study of human population is known by two terms, population studies and demography. Demography means a science of the logical and systematic study of people and various related aspects. Demography is the study of statistics of births, deaths and movements of people, age, rural-urban structure of population, etc., as illustrating the demographic condition of population of communities. It is a discipline concerned with the study of demographic processes on one hand and demographic structure of population on the other. Thus, two basic subdivisions of demography are demographic processes and demographic structures. The demographic processes consist mainly of fertility, mortality and migration. Similarly, demographic structure consists mainly of age composition of population, male-female composition, size of population, territorial or regional composition and social composition of population. Social or substantive demography takes into account not only the demographic components but also non-demographic components such as economic, social and cultural factors. Social demography is based on the premise that social processes and social structure regulate demographic processes and demographic structures. Thus, social demography comprises four subdivisions, namely demographic processes, demographic structures, social processes and social structures. Looking at this, what are the characteristics of Indian social demography? Let's try to understand those here. The birth rate, the death rate and the infant mortality rates of population in India have declined, but they are still quite high as compared to developed countries. The growth rate of population has declined over the years, but the size of total population in India has increased a lot. India has crossed a population of more than 1 billion now. The increase in the size of population in India can be attributed to a relatively faster rate of decline in mortality than fertility. Life expectancy has increased. Simultaneously, it has also resulted in an increase in the size of the population. The age composition of the population indicates that the size of the population at lower age grounds has become smaller because of decline in mortality and fertility. Yet the size is quite significant as compared with more developed countries because of the progressive impact of high fertility. The age composition indicates an important change in India's population, that is, marked increase in the size of the working population, which has a number of socio-economic implications. Another significant change noticeable in India's population is that the size of elderly population has increased. This has got a number of social, economic and health-related implications. Increases in the size of working population and in the size of adult population to have certain policy implication for the government. The gender composition and rural-urban distribution of population indicate a relatively smaller proportion of female population and continuing preponderance of rural population in India's total population. These two characteristics are related with the decline in the gender ratio and slower process of migration and urbanization. The composition of literate population in India indicates an increase in the size of literate population, but there is no significant decadal change in this regard. The lower gender ratio and high infant mortality rate indicate comparatively lower status of women and poor health condition of India's population. Like the process of fertility and mortality, migration is another demographic process. It brings about changes in the size and structure of population. Since migration causes change in the place of residence, It is termed as spatial mobility, which may be local, regional, national, or even international. I hope you have got a fair idea now about the demography of India. Rural-urban divides and linkages. Now we will understand in detail about the rural and urban lives of India. Village habitation have been an enduring feature of all human societies. The rural community is a kind of enlarged primary group categorized by intimate face-to-face interaction, having a certain degree of community sentiment and a relatively autonomous organization. The urban community is a loose organization of people living in a limited area with relatively high population density and possessing a relatively high degree of intercommunication. Urban life is a product of complex social forces. They have been produced by population momentum, immigration of rural people, development of transportation and communication, boom of trade centers, and influences of industrialization. The census of India distinguishes three types of settlements based on the size and density of population: city, town, and village. A settlement with a population of 1 lakh or more is called a city. A town should have a population of 5,000 or more, while villages are settlements with less than 5,000 population. Local self-government system of a city is called corporation, that of a town is called municipality, and a village has a panchayat. Let us now understand more about the rural communities of India. Rural communities in India have their own salient features as distinct from urban communities and centers. The special features of villages in India include the following. Agriculture. It is the dominant mode of occupation. Agriculture is not only a mode of production but also a way of life. It influences the entire gamut of relationship in rural setting. Although a small section of the people earn their livelihood from non-agriculture occupation, the occupation are indirectly connected with agriculture. Agriculture economy is the main basic of village economy. Joint family. One of the most remarkable features of village life in India is the existence of joint families. Although joint families are also found in urban areas, their importance as a social and cultural institution is greater in village communities. Caste system. It has always been the foundation of Indian village community. Social interaction, ritual performance, occupation and other things are affected to a large extent by caste norms. It is the main form of social stratification in village life even today. Jagmani system. It refers to a system of social, cultural and economic ties between different caste families. Each village was divided into two broader groups, Jagmans and service provider castes. The service providers were usually paid in kind and or cash. This relation of Jagmani ties was supposed to bind various caste families into a hereditary and permanent relationship. Land-owning Jagmans came from upper castes like Brahmins, Rajputs, Patels, Patnayaks, Marathas, Reddis, Linkayats, Nayars, etc. While the service provider caste came from middle and lower level castes like Nayas, Kumhar, Lohar, Sonar, Barhi, Tamoli, Dhobi, etc. Calendar. In most villages, people organize their time according to traditional Indian calendars which are intimately linked with their socio-cultural and religious life. Community sentiment. This is usually very strong among the members of a village since the relationship among the members is face-to-face, direct, intimate and personal. Simplicity of living. It is an important feature of village life. Crimes and deviant behavior like theft, murder, misconduct, etc. are minimal as there is close contact among the villagers. They are God-fearing and tradition-bound. They are not much affected by the glamour of urban communities and lead a simple life. Poverty and illiteracy. These coexist in rural India since long. Uneconomic land holdings, barren and fragmented lands result in poor productivity. As a result, a large percentage of villagers live below the poverty line, lack even basic amenities. Despite a number of government schemes and rural development efforts, poverty persists in rural areas and productivity of agriculture and other economic activities in villages continues to be low. Less intensity in mobility and social change. It is a striking feature of most village communities in India. Change of occupation is not easily possible. Being conservative in nature, orthodox in their beliefs, values and tradition, most villages are not quick to accept change or reform. Rigidity of social controls thin. The primary institution, example family, caste, religion, etc. play a significant role in exercising informal social control which is very strong and direct. Observance of these informal rules becomes obligatory for members. There is little chance of any violation and any such deviation is severely criticized and punished by the people through their village panchayats. Features of the urban communities in India. What are these? Social heterogeneity. The concentration of a large population in a small area leads to social heterogeneity. Density maximizes the competition for space and for comparative advantage and thus forces specialization. The city has always been the melting pot of a variety of people and cultures. It has brought together people from different corners of the world and has not only tolerated but rewarded individual differences. Social control. In city, individuals are free from close social control. The city usually promotes a sense of alienation and loneliness. Secondary association operate as legal entities and pressure groups. Voluntary association. The size of the urban population, its close proximity, diversity and easy contact makes it the perfect setting for voluntary association. In the urban space, nearly every kind of group acquires a voluntary character. Individualism. The secondary and voluntary character of urban association, the multiplicity of opportunities and the social mobility all force the individual to make her or his own decision and to plan her or his life as a career. As a result, self-interest and individualism tends to grow in urban communities. Social mobility. City characterizes and promotes great social mobility. The elaborate division of labor found in the city coincides with a system of stratification which is based on achievement rather than ascribed status. The urban person can raise or lower her or his status to a remarkable degree during her or his lifetime. Urban structure is managed by recruiting a heterogeneous population on the basis of competence, efficiency and novelty rather than birth. Greater inequality. Given the diversity of its population and the impersonality of its context, a certain tolerance is found regarding opinion and interest. Urban slums and elite clubs are notable examples of greater inequality in urban communities. Spatial segregation. The competition for space in the heterogeneous and dynamic city leads to characteristic segregation of groups and functions visible in the city's spatial pattern. The center of the urban area is monopolized by functions of basic importance to the whole city. Summary. Now in the end, let us summarize what we have learned in this lecture. India has unity in its diversity with many religions living together. India has been home to some of the oldest civilizations, dynasties and kingdoms which have been of interest to historians from all across the world. The history of India can be broadly divided into 5 parts: prehistoric history of India, ancient history of India, medieval history of India, modern history of India and post-independent history of India. Indian terms that are sometimes translated as caste are Varna, Jati, Jat, Biradri and Samaj. The study of human population is known by 2 terms: population studies and demography. The census of India distinguishes 3 types of settlements based on the size and density of population: city, town and village.